Chapter 6. They all watched the deep hoist go down on Lara's map, a blinking red light on her screen that stopped at one of the shaft's offshoots. Seconds passed. She didn't envy Teep's job at the moment, alone and in the dark, watching a tracker for alien attack. His screen showed a trembling motion sensor surrounded by murky redness. "I'm at the spur," Teep finally said. His voice was high and shaky, a match to his pulse reading. "I can't see all the way to the end, but I got nothing moving." Pop didn't hesitate. "Leave it for the team. Move on down, Teep." "You're sending him in alone?" asked Sturgis. "Obviously you haven't heard much about Berserker units," said Pop. "We can't maximise Max's effectiveness if we don't know what we're up against. Teep is the Nemesis's point man. It's his job to find out." Jess and Pulaski had Max set up by the deep hoist shaft. Lara heard the lift hit bottom from Teep's pickup, and then the echo went through the shaft from the others, a hollow metal thunder that rolled up and out into the connecting tunnel. "I got something here." Behind Teep's quaver was the steady beep of the tracker. Lara checked the plans and punched in coordinates. "It's holding still. Looks like 2.5 at..." Sturgis gasped. Lara snapped her head up to see gaping alien jaws plunge through the mesh and straight at Teep, straight at them on the monitor. The dark creature was slowed by the steel gate. Teep's rifle whipped up and fired in a burst of explosive light. The black, sloping dome of the XT drone's skull ripped away, brain torn to shreds by the flat, rapid patter of armor-piercing rounds. Teep kept to short, solid bursts, and the long, lithe metal of the alien flesh burst backwards in jagged pieces. Blood hissed against steel, and the impossibly tall body dropped away, all in a matter of seconds. Sudden silence over the comm, as they all waited for Teep to report. They could hear him breathe in, slow and ragged. A shaky laugh. "That's one we don't have to worry about. Maybe that was the whole problem. A lone renegade, what do you think? We could just take off. Over?" Teep was cooler inside than he had sounded. He had to be. He quickly pulled his mask up and then laid his weapon on the floor of the hoist. He turned and stepped out of the cage, still inhaling and then exhaling deeply, part of his training. A few paces away into the dark, he extinguished his shoulder lamp and knelt on the ground. Lara could only make out a dark blur of strange symmetry, alien in nature. The emergency lights were shrouded behind walls of ropey secretion. "Calling flare, over." "Copy that, Teep, we hear you." Lara hoped that he'd remember that and take what comfort he could. The black tunnel stretched out ahead of him. Teep raised a single flare tube. The movement blurred in the red shadows. "Flare!" The gently arcing sphere of long burning chemicals lit a green-grey path down the shaft's corridor. The clear and sudden picture was merciless in detail. Walls so thickly strewn with matte secretions that the tunnel seemed organic. The fluid alien architecture like black curving bones and sinews. Support beams dripped with the viscous stuff. Lara caught a dark flash of movement. Two. Shapes that rushed and capered from the shadows. "We've hit the mother lode," whispered Teep, and collapsed face down on the floor as the aliens closed in. Ellis watched for Max as Pulaski and Jess waited tensely for the hoist to come back up. The drones usually ran to the live bait, but there was a chance that one could be assigned to follow non-inhabitant movement or some such criteria. He'd read that each nest varied in types of worker, just like ants. Teep had fallen silent after his final whisper. Watching from Max's point of view, Ellis felt almost as though he were there, experiencing the tensions of the team as they waited for word. His earlier high-strung state had eased to a pleasant anticipation. He had graduated at the top of his class in synthetics, and with high percentile comprehension of the company program. He wasn't going to be any readier. The hoist pulled to a slow stop in front of the ground team. As the shredded mesh gate slid upward, Ellis tensed, but it was clear. Pulaski turned and looked at Max Ellis with a scowl. He spoke in a hushed tone as he stared at its still face just above the camera. What do you think he's thinking? He ain't thinking zip. Probably the best thing for him. Jess looked into the camera lens and spoke directly to Ellis. Are the readings level on Max? Over? Affirmative, ground leader. Ready to fire, over? He wondered if he should say something else, some words of encouragement. Nothing helpful came to mind. Lara spoke into his ear just as Sturgis's low voice came over the shipwide from Ops. Ellis focused on Lara. Contact made. Stand by, over. Sturgis. He's just letting them capture him. Pop was also into ship. He must have switched his mic off. Good thing, considering the topic. Teep certainly didn't need to hear it. The alien's prime motivation is to reproduce. To them, the human body is more valuable as a live incubator than dead meat. Provided he remains totally docile, they'll carry him off to the egg chamber, right to the Queen herself. Any threatening moves, he's ripped apart. Ellis frowned. A concise speech, but not a very sympathetic one. Teep's haggard breathing rasped over his headset, joined now by a soft hissing that Ellis could only just make out. The point man's tortured whisper was transmitted clearly through the relays. Taking me through an entrance. Lights are lower. 3 drones on me. I'm on my side. Can see hatched eggs, maybe a dozen. Lara cut in. Ellis, cut sedation back on Max. Teep's in the chamber. Ellis punched in numbers, and Max's tranquilizer count dropped. The man inside the machine wouldn't wake up until dosed, but immediately REM took up as the heavy sedatives wore thin. The volunteer was dreaming. Pictures coming through nice and sharp, Teep. Stay cool, said Pop. Oh, God. Mac. That's Mac. Sturgis sounded pitifully forlorn. Ellis wondered who Mac was and how many others he was seeing. Some surely still alive and suffering, impregnated by alien larvae. No sympathy from Pop. Time to move, ground leader. We got visual confirmation on Queen. Drop off at the first spur and decontaminate. Send Max on down, over. Jess and Pulaski moved quickly. Max was loaded, and they were in the lift in 15 seconds, weapons up. Ellis scanned the Max's reads and took a deep breath as the hoist descended into the heat. This was it. His opportunity to show Pop that he wasn't excess baggage, and the ground team that he was worthy of their inclusion. The elevator stopped at the spur, and Ellis could see walls encased with dark and dripping goo, shadows deep and cloudy. Go get 'em, Max, said Jess. He and Pulaski stepped off the lift. Jess tapped the controls and the hoist went down. Ellis's last view of them obscured through the murky gloom. The Max hit bottom, and the gate lifted to an alien world. Ellis watched the sluggish pulse of Max's dreams, and waited for word. The Candyman barely looked at his tracker as they moved through the deserted shaft offshoot. Those fuckers were hiding. They knew what was good for them. It was a familiar scene. The dark tunnel was covered in alien crap and it stunk like dead bodies on a hot day. The humidity was always the killer. Pulaski felt trickles of sticky sweat slide down his arms and legs in spite of the heat skivvies. It didn't bother him, none of it. He took it all in, pumped for the release of fiery action in his hands, trigger finger under the guard. These fucking bugs were badass and mean. They took shit that wasn't theirs to take and killed civilians, and the Candyman was going to teach them a thing or two about losing. Yeah, you better hide your sorry asses, he said, but quietly. Jess had gotten on him the last time about talking in the heat. Got movement in the back, said Jess. 1 o'clock high. Pulaski grinned. Time for a close encounter of the bug-swatting kind. A few more steps, and he saw it. The creature was wedged behind a loader, squatting in the dark like the giant insect it was, all teeth and metal. The nightmare hissed and unfurled its long tail to spring. The pound of pulse rifle, and the tunnel went strobe, alien body torn to shrieking acid by Pulaski's weapon. Another drone clambered over its dead brother and stumbled screaming into a curtain of fire. Want some? Want some? Here, you bastards, eat it! Eat it! Watch your back! The Candyman spun, crouched and opened up on a leaping drone. The long black metal of its grinning face blew apart. Brain jelly soup spattered in wet threads against the darkness. Pulaski laughed and spun again, joined in Jess's fire against another slavering demon. Pulaski turned in a circle, eager for targets. He was amped, itching to blow up anything that moved, muscles tight and breathing hard. The haze settled slowly, the thick air silent and still. Nothing moved. Jess watched his tracker for a few seconds, and then exhaled sharply. That's a wrap. Shit. It was over before he'd even warmed up. 4 fucking bugs and clear. Pulaski kept his weapon ready and walked to the deep shadows at the back of the tunnel to confirm, stepping over oozing black bodies to scout the darkness. Unfortunately, the machine didn't lie. Ease up, Candyman. Max sometimes throws us a bone, don't he? Jess smiled tight, then called through to Ops. Decontamination complete. Got us 4 bugs in a secondary. No eggs, no sieves. Over? Copy that, said Lara. Drop a relay and stand by. We're about to flush the Max. Over and out. Jess pulled out a transmitter and nodded to Pulaski. Take 10, Candyman, but keep sharp. No falling asleep, all right? Pulaski sighed. It wasn't even funny. He shouldered his rifle, then hunched down next to the loader and pulled a candy bar out of his belt pouch. The chocolate had melted, sticking in waxy clumps to the wrapper. He sighed again and stared across at a tangle of alien limbs, blood still bubbling weakly as it ate into the floor. Sometimes this job could be a real letdown. He bit into caramel and chewed sullenly while they waited for Max to do his thing. Lara checked the reads from Ellis and nodded to Pop, who adjusted his headset. Sturgis hovered behind them, silent and haggard. Flush him, Ellis, said Pop. Flushing. Lara watched the numbers quickly drop to minimal as the sedatives were chemically expelled from the Max's system. She glanced at the lab monitor. Ellis looked calm and steady, competent. The Max was still in the hoist. From its screen they could clearly see a mid-sized nest, alien walls glimmering in the grey light of the incendiary flare. It looked like the inside of a decaying beehive blown to gigantic proportions, but with a symmetry truly alien in its form. Lara searched for a better analogy, but could find none. It looked insane. Insane and unclean. Kick in adrenaline, said Pop. Adrenaline, level 1. The Max jerked suddenly, and a handful of drones crept into view, hissing, talons extended. The muted light played off their improbably long bodies and skulls, seemed to accent the horrivid surrealness of the infestation. Hit him again, said Pop. Level 2. Ellis was doing well, no hesitation. Max shuddered, its heavy arms snapping up and away from the carrier. A new list of stats flashed on Lara's screen as the Berserker's scanners switched on. One of the drones lunged forward, shrieking. Bring him to the boil, Ellis! Level 3 and fully functioning. The Max took one massive step out of the hoist and became the wrath of God.